Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to another walk through the cards. Today we'll be taking a stroll through the richly painted Slow Tarot. I will share with you my thoughts about the cards and my impressions of this deck as we wander through the 78 cards of this tarot. We'll take a quick peek at the guidebooks and wrap up our time together with a pull from this deck. The Slow Tarot, according to its creators, is a re-examination of the themes and symbols of the tarot, synthesized and contextualized to be relevant to our modern perspective. It is a deck designed to be a tool for self-examination, with evocative illustrations that call to mind the uncanny timelessness of the classic tarot deck, while creating a frame of reference that is intimate and in touch with today. The Slow Tarot is a 6-year personal art project featuring oil paintings by San Francisco Bay Area artist Lacey Bryant and published by the Modern Eden Gallery. So let's take a stroll through the Slow Tarot. So here we have our lovely Fool, and he is very traditional. We definitely have that leaping off of the cliff, but I love the sunburst behind him. He's got his little dog, his little sack of goodies, and he is ready to leap into that new adventure. And it's just a beautiful painting. So here we have the Magician, and we do have a female magician, which is really nice. We have all of her elements here, and I love that if you look in her hands, she's pulling down from above and giving out to below where we see all the roses growing. I love the spider web sort of wheel-like symbology going on in the background with the Ouroboros and the and that snake. There's lots of little details to pick up on in these cards, as the author in the guidebook mentions there are lots of Easter eggs within this deck, which are fun to take a look and explore. So next we have the High Priestess, and she is beautiful. I love that she does look like she's older, so she has all of that inner wisdom. She has her book there, and it has the triple goddess symbol. We definitely have the black and white pillars represented here in the Sphinx. But again, so much going on in the background. We have the moon with the tree in the starry background, and then the tree in bloom up here. So kind of the winter and summer. We definitely get that idea of balance and inner and outer within this card. So here we have the Empress, and this is one of the cards that has been a little bit controversial. Some people have really not resonated with this Empress. I like her body type. To be perfectly honest, she definitely looks very real, and I really appreciate that about her. She does look a little bit sad, which I think might be some of the issues that some people have had with it. But if you think of the Empress as representing that sort of Mother Earth as we tend to think of her nowadays, she would be sad now. So I think that that's very poignant, and I think it's very on point for a more modern deck, which this is. I love the little stars around her eyes, and we have all this growth, and it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous Empress card. I really do like it. So here we have the Emperor, and he is very regal looking. I love the kind of fiery background behind him. Of course, he has his ram, and we see his city in the background, and it's just a very strong Emperor card that I quite like in this deck. So here we have the Hierophant, and this is one of the cards in the deck that, while it's a beautiful painting, it really doesn't resonate really well with me. It's definitely a more traditional Hierophant in that kind of popey look that we have, but I like to see of the Hierophant more as like the teacher in particularly in a more modern deck. But I think that there's a lot that you could work with there in terms of a Hierophant, even in terms of teaching and maybe some institutions. So he does work quite well, but he's very traditional. So here we have the Lovers, and it is a beautiful depiction of the lovers. The one thing that I did when I went through this deck, when I first got it, Renee from Meadowlark Mystic and we sat down, and I took it over to her house, and we sat down and looked through it. And one of the things that we noticed was that the house in the background is on fire. So we have these lovers here just completely oblivious to what's going on around them. And I think that's an interesting interpretation of the lovers. And I think that there's some interesting things that can be gleaned from that. But again, beautiful card. And here we have the Chariot with the girl on her bicycle. We get that sense that she's definitely leaving. She's taking control of her life, going her own way. It looks like perhaps we might have some fire going on in the background. So, Renee and I were joking about how, she's the child and she's leaving the burning house while mom and dad are out frolicking in the garden. So we just thought that was kind of funny, but gorgeous Chariot card. I really like it. So here we have Strength, and it is just a beautiful, very traditional Strength card. But we definitely see more of her prying the mouth open. We definitely see her more embracing that wild nature, that inner beast, and I think that's really lovely. So here we have the Hermit, and I do really like this Hermit card. I love that he's sitting on the roots of the tree. He has his lantern. We definitely see a lot of growth. We see the mountains in the background, so we get that sense that he is definitely off and away. But he's still a part of nature, and I think that's a really great message to see in the Hermit, that you can be in solitude but still be a part of the world. So I think that's really great. So here we have Fortune for the Wheel of Fortune, and we have, Lady Luck here, and I think that that's a really interesting interpretation. This deck definitely attunes more to a fortune tellery type of interpretations, so we definitely see the Wheel as being a fortune card rather than perhaps a cycle of nature card as we see in some of the decks. But we see she has her coins here. She's giving you a little wink. I do really like her because she kind of gives that idea of, sometimes things are just not in your control and you got to trust in the universe. So here we have Balance in place of Justice, which I actually do quite like, although I tend to think of Temperance more as the card of balance. So to me, it's kind of a repetitive energy in the deck. But I do really like the card. I like these sort of, I don't know if they're haystacks or stones, but they have these little carvings in them. She has her cup in one hand, her candle in the other. And it's just a beautiful card. I don't really get a justice sense out of it, though. So it's just one little issue I had with it. Loved this Hangman. If you can see up here in the trees, he has spider webs and spiders crawling all over him. So he has been there a while. He's really kind of maybe stuck in this place. We can see that he's caught the cat's cradle, I think is what that's called, that he's been weaving between his hands. And we see, he's got his little bow tie on, which is just really cute. I think it's a great Hangman, but I think it's also can be a little bit of a cautionary tale of not to get stuck, stuck in that waiting time, in that shifting perspective time. You got to keep moving. So here we have Death, and this, I really do like this as a death card, despite the fact my one quibble about it is that this is a very small figure, and to me it looks like a child, which it's probably not meant to be, but that's just kind of how it seems to me, which I don't really care for that. But what I do really like about this card is I like all the life coming from the death. So you can see these rotten apples here are being eaten by the bugs. But in the death of the apples, we have the life of the bugs. So I think it's a really great depiction of death for that sort of renewal that comes from death, that second chance, that new life. So I think it's really gorgeous. So here we have the Temperance card, and this is a card that I really doesn't resonate for me. I like to see the lady with the sort of alchemical mixing going on, and here we just have a man pouring some tea. We have two figures on either side. We definitely see some, although this looks like a very nice opulent setting, you can see in the background the windows are broken. So maybe that's that balance between things that are good and things that are not so good. Doesn't really work for me for Temperance, but it is a beautiful painting. So here we have the Devil, which has been named Temptation in this deck. And this is the one card in the deck that almost broke this deck for me. To be perfectly honest, I still don't like it. I'm still trying to work and coming to terms with it. I had spoken to Dustin from Modern Metaphysics Man about this deck prior to my purchasing it. And we had talked about this particular card. And, he had mentioned working with this deck sort of in shadow. And I think that this deck would really work well for that because there are quite a few cards that could be a bit confrontational. I just do not like this depiction. I get it. I get what the message is, but it's just not one that I care for in terms of a devil card. So here we have the Tower, and again, another card that it's a beautiful painting, but I really don't resonate with the imagery here. What I do like about the card is this cat, because he looks like he knows what's up. That cat has got everything under control. But we have the card Tower here, and I feel like the way that I read the Tower is that the tower is destruction and change, right? But it's built on a solid foundation. And here, a tower of cards is not really built on a solid foundation. It's not going to take much to topple this. And that to me just really doesn't, resonate really well with that things are going to fall apart, but as long as you're built on a stable structure, you're going to get through it. You're going to move on to, to the next card or to the next phase. And I just don't really see that in this card, but it's a gorgeous painting. All of these are gorgeous paintings. So here we have the Star card, which I do really love. I like that we have all this turmoil, this churning sea around her, yet she is keeping her eye focused on where she's going. We often, see the Star card as hope. I also, in this particular image, can see this as staying the course despite all the chaos that might be going on around you. And I think that's a really beautiful message. So here we have the gorgeous Moon card, and we have just, everything we need in a Moon card right here. What I do particularly love about this card is that there are little paths with doorways. And I think that's really an interesting depiction of what we tend to see as the two towers. Here we have two doors, and I think that's really, really interesting and really beautiful. So here we have the Sun card, no naked baby. We do have a young girl, but I think she's quite lovely. And I love all the sunflowers, and it's a very joyous, really beautiful card. So here we have Judgment, and despite the fact that this might be a bit of a trigger card for some people, I really do love it. To me, this card actually sort of speaks more of a justice card, because if you look here in the reflection of the mirror image, you can see that she is she's putting her hand into an opening in her chest. She's, getting ready to touch her heart. In her hair, we see the feather, so we get that idea of justice with the heart and the feather being weighed, which again, I see this more as a justice card, but I could definitely see it as judgment as well. It's, weighing where we've come from, where we're going, looking at who we are, what we are right in this moment, and kind of weighing who we want to be versus maybe who we are right now. So it really is a beautiful card that I quite like. So this deck does come with 2 world cards. This one is the first, and I have to say that while I really like them both, this one I think is my favorite, and it's the one that I choose to leave in the deck. We have this beautiful world tree. There's a little figure here. I love the snake mixed in here into the roots, and then we have the planets around. I think it's just a gorgeous depiction of the world. It kind of encompasses everything in one card, the whole universe, our little microcosmic world to the bigger expansive universe, which I think is really beautiful. So here we have our second world card. Again, another really beautiful card that I like, and I really went back and forth between which one I wanted to include, but this one has a tree, and anything with a tree on it is just usually an automatic for me. I do love the planets. I love the kind of astrological, scientific theme in this card, which is really great as well. So again, just another beautiful depiction of the world, just a little bit different take on it. So in here we have the bonus card, which is card 22 and the card of atonement. There is no reference to this card in the book, so I'm not really sure what its purpose is. To be perfectly honest, this card really doesn't do much for me. Being that there's no reference, I don't know what its purpose is. I just don't put it in my deck when I use it. It's a gorgeous painting, but again, like I said, doesn't really work for me. There's a lot going on in this card, so you could definitely, pick up some intuitive hits. It does have the title of atonement. So, it's something that you can definitely incorporate. I personally do not. So that takes us through the major arcana. So next we have our suit of wands, and you can see here that all of the aces are borderless, which kind of gives you an indication of what this deck might have looked like had it been completely borderless, which would have been stunning. I love this ace of wands. I love the big wand with all the growth, love the little dandelions here and the little salamander. It's just a beautiful ace of wands. So I'm going to move a little bit faster through the minors, or we will be here forever. So here we have the Two of Wands, definitely a great depiction for that. As you can tell, all of the images are very modern in this deck, which is really the creator's intention. Gorgeous Three of Wands. The Four of Wands, I love the teepee structure here. We definitely get that sense of stability, which is how I see the fours. I love this Five of Wands. We generally see a battle going on, and here we see children, play fighting. And I think that this is a really great message that, despite some of that conflict, there are lessons to be learned in that conflict and in those challenges. And I think that's a gorgeous, gorgeous image for that. So here we have the Six of Wands with our lacrosse team in victory. Very traditional. And here we have our Seven of Wands, which I really like because he's climbing up this ladder. And I think that's really great because when we think of 7 as 3 plus 4, we get that sense of growth, that moving on to the next level. I think that's really wonderful. Here we have the beautiful Eight of Wands, and I really love most everything about this card. I love the birds, I love the wands on fire, just a gorgeous card. And I do, even though it does lean more towards the Waitsmith, I do really like this image. And here we have our Nine of Wands, which again, another gorgeous painting. She definitely looks like, you know, she's maybe been through a little something. She's got a little bandage here, but she really doesn't look very worse for wear. She's come through it, and you know, we see the wands in bloom behind her, and I think that's really beautiful. She's triumphed through those challenges that she's had to face through the Suit of Wands. So here we have the Ten of Wands with we can definitely pick out our more traditional, you know, sense of burden or responsibility, but as I see the tens as moving on to the next level, the 1 + 0 is 1 starting again. You know, I think of this as he's off to build his new structure, his new project, his new house. So I think that's really gorgeous. Love the pages in this deck. Here we have the Page of Wand with the child that's off camping, you know, learning, exploring. I think that's really wonderful. And these are out of sync. Apologize for that. So here we have the Knight of Wands, and this particular card is one of my favorites in the deck. I love this knight on his motorcycle. He's an older gentleman, which I absolutely love to see in a deck. I love to see a variety of ages because, you know, we do not all stay young and beautiful our whole lives. Nature just doesn't work that way. So I'd love to see some older figures represented in the cards, and I just really love this card. Definitely get that sense of he is off on his next adventure, and I think that's wonderful. Here we have our very powerful Queen of Wands, and I think she's quite lovely. She looks very strong, very independent. She has kind of a bird's nest going on in her hair here. Lots of little things, just lots of little Easter eggs to pick out in this deck. She's quite beautiful. So here we have our King of Wands, which is a card that I'm a little unsure about at this point. I haven't quite come to grips with this one yet. We have a mask here. He's got his wand that's on fire. His third eye is on fire, and there's a lamp up here in the sky. Why? I don't know. Haven't figured that one out yet. It's of course not referenced in the book, so, but it's a great depiction, lots to work with there. So that is our Suit of Wands. So up next we have our Suit of Cups, and we see this gorgeous illustration of the borderless ace with the cup, and it's just a beautiful ace. I think it works beautifully. So here we have our Two of Cups, very traditional with that sort of sense of relationship, maybe budding romance. Here we have our Three of Cups with our three ladies who are celebrating. Beautiful card. Here we have the Four of Cups, which I quite really like because although I don't tend to read the Four of Cups in the Waitsmith tradition as in boredom or disappointment, I can work with this because I feel like these three cups, he's got these three cups, but he needs that fourth one to really stabilize his emotions, to bring things, you know, into balance, and she's got that cup for him. There's a lot of different ways you can read this card, but that's just kind of how I see it, and it's just a gorgeous painting. Here we have the Five of Cups, which I quite like. It's just a really sweet card, a wonderful depiction of that sort of heartbreak, that sadness. Gorgeous. So here we have our Six of Cups, where we definitely get that sense of nostalgia, happiness and harmony. We have these wonderful cups with all this growth, this lush garden, you know, our happy children. It's just a beautiful card. So here we have the Seven of Cups, which I quite like. I like that the cups are all hanging down from the trees here, and then each cup has, of course, an item in it. And I think there you can read this card pretty easily, either using your Waitsmith or a more numerological sense. I think it works beautifully either way. Here we have our Eight of Cups, and we definitely get that sense of leaving things behind. I love the just mishmash pile of teacups here. I think it's a really great representation of the eight. So here we have the Nine of Cups, and this is one of the cards that I have a little bit of a response to. I just don't have a word for it. It's a I'm not quite sure. I haven't been able to put my finger on it. I love this idea of the older woman who's very comfortable, very situated, very settled in who she is and her emotions and in her heart space, and I love that imagery. But all the red lines on her face kind of give me a little bit of a zombie-ish vibe. And there's a lot of cobwebs, and there's some scissors hanging down here, and there's some kind of ominous, just underlying energy to this card that just kind of gives me the creepies a little bit. I think it's a gorgeous card, but there's something underlying about it that that really kind of bugs me. And I'm sure that's probably more a comment on me than it is on her. But again, gorgeous card. Here we have the 10 of Cups with the beautiful cups making the rainbow. Definitely a traditional looking card, but it's beautiful. So here we have our very cute Page of Cups, and he's just adorable. He's got his little fish in his cup. Again, just beautiful. Here we have the Knight of Cups, which I actually quite like. I like this sort of mermaid horsey, kind of bringing in that mystical into the mundane, which is kind of lovely. You know, he's got his cup, but he is actually looking back at where he's been. So even though he's moving forward, he's maybe staying aware of where he's come from, and I think that's quite beautiful. Here we have our Queen of Cups, which is really not one of my favorites in this deck. There's just a little too much going on here for me. A little too much textures. Her headdress is really large, and it kind of detracts from her beautiful face. But again, it's a beautiful Queen of Cups. And here we have the King of Cups, which to me is a complete miss. There's nothing about this King of Cups that I really resonate with. The ocean looks gross and dirty to me, and he looks like he's just swimming in his own filth. And to me, he looks like Pauly Shore, and those of you who are old enough to know who Pauly Shore is will probably see that now, and I just apologize, but every time I see this card, that's immediately what I go to, is Pauly Shore in some nasty, dirty water, and that's just really not how I see the King of Cups. But I mean, again, beautiful painting, not discrediting the artwork at all. That's just what I see when I look at it. So that is the King of Cups, and that is our Suit of Cups. So next we have our Suit of Wands with our gorgeous ace. I do really like this ace. We have this beautiful sword, the hummingbirds, and I love this sort of crown of flowers. Gorgeous. Again, borderless. Absolutely stunning. This Two of Swords is not a real hit for me. Just, I get the imagery, and it does definitely make sense. You know, he has a heart, so maybe we're balancing the heart and mind here in this particular Two of Swords. It's just the imagery that I don't really resonate with. It's a beautiful painting, but not really how I see the Two of Swords, but again, quite beautiful. This Three of Swords, to be perfectly honest, is quite a disappointment to me. I feel like in this deck where there is so many beautiful paintings, so many beautiful landscapes and personalities and people that have been rendered and depicted, and then we have the just lackluster, you know, typical Three of Swords heart, the heart with the three swords in it. And I just feel like really in this day and age that we should be able to move past that. I get the honoring tradition, but in a deck that is so lusciously painted, I feel like this is it just does not mesh well with the rest of the deck. But it's definitely your traditional Three of Swords, and of course, I mean, it's a beautiful painting. It is what it is. So moving on, we do have the Four of Swords here, which I quite love. I love the Four of Swords creating this canopy above her where she's resting. I love that the canopy looks like kind of a starry night. And we have this growth going on through the bricks, so it's just beautiful Four of Swords. So here we have our Five of Swords, which I actually quite like. I wasn't sure if I was going to at first, but I like that she's holding the sword to his throat, so maybe like his throat chakra, and definitely get that sense of disruption that we see in the fives. So here we have the beautiful Six of Swords, get that sense of moving on to the next thing. You know, it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous painting. We have the lighthouse in the background with the sun on the horizon. I think it's beautiful. So here we have the Seven of Swords, and it's a very traditional Waite-Smith interpretation of it. Very thiefy energy, hard to work around if you don't read Waite-Smith. Here we have the Eight of Swords, and this is a beautiful Eight of Swords. We have the traditional 8 swords with the person being bound. It's just a beautiful card. Here we have the Nine of Swords, again, very traditional, but just a gorgeous depiction of it. And here we have the Ten of Swords, which is another card that just really almost broke this deck for me. I don't particularly resonate with the idea of the 10 swords in the back anyway, but when we have all this blood here, it just, you know, really glorifies it and really makes that ending feel very final, which makes it hard to move on to the page, which would be the next in the succession. So gorgeous illustration or painting though. Here we have the Page of Swords, which I absolutely love. I think she's just amazing. She's ready to do battle. She's learning, she's growing. I think it's wonderful. So here we have our Knight of Swords, which actually looks more like the Death card to me. And if it didn't have a title on it, I would probably think that was the Death card. It's a beautiful painting though. I really quite like it. And here we have the Queen of Swords, and she is just awesome. I think she's probably my favorite queen in this deck. She looks very powerful, kind of get a Game of Thrones vibe off of her, but she definitely knows what's up. She's power, and she's got it all handled, and I think that's great. And here we have our King of Swords, which I think he's my favorite king in this deck as well. I think the swords, the Court of Swords in this deck are my favorite of all the court cards. The King of Swords here definitely has a very Odin vibe for me, which is lovely. And he looks very weary, and he's put a lot of effort into cultivating his world there, but you know, it's been worth it in the end, and I think that's wonderful. So that is our Suit of Swords. And finally, we have our Suit of Coins, or which would be considered pentacles in other decks, perhaps discs. I do have to say that this is my least favorite suit in the whole deck, which is really unfortunate because the pentacles is usually my favorite suit. Here we have our Ace, which to me is kind of, you know, it works as an ace, but when you compare it to the other aces, it's a little bit flat. But still, you know, beautiful painting. I do quite like this Two of Coins. We have all of this, you know, kind of chaos going on around her, and she's still weighing her decisions, so I think that's great. Here we have the Three of Coins, and we see that, you know, she's paying him for the work that's been done, which is quite beautiful. The Suit of Coins is very materialistic in this deck, which in terms of money, and that's a little more materialistic than I tend to like to see in my Suit of Pentacles or my Suit of Coins. But given that it's called the Suit of Coins, and this deck is definitely geared more toward a fortune tellery type of energy, I think it does work quite well. It's just not how I tend to really see the pentacles, but I can definitely work with it. Here's our Four of Coins, and I quite like her. She's got her 4 coins here. She looks kind of a little bit trickstery to me, like maybe she's going to do a magic trick with those coins. Even though I tend to see 4 of Coins as, you know, the stabilization of your resources, but when we think of it in the Waite Smith tradition of maybe that sense of hoarding your resources, you know, we can definitely get that sense out of it too. So here we have our 5 of Coins with our, you know, person who's perhaps down on their luck, looking for a little bit of assistance, a little handout. Quite beautiful. And you can see here in the 6 of Coins, the coin images are very similar. So perhaps she is the one that's providing that charity for him. But we also see the scales in this card. So maybe she's balancing how much, you know, she can give versus how much she needs to keep for herself, or perhaps she's just being greedy and just, you know, only giving what she needs. I think that there's a lot of different ways you can read this card. So here we have the 7 of Coins, and we see our Lady of Fortune, or our Lady of Luck is back again for an appearance. Again, that trickstery energy of the 7s. Generally not how I see the 7s, but it definitely tracks with the rest of the 7s in this deck. So here you have the beautiful 8 of Coins. We definitely get that sense of mastery. I love that these glass windows that he's putting up all show the growth of a butterfly, and here she's holding the last one. I think that's really beautiful. Here we have our gorgeous 9 of Coins, which is just a lovely, you know, very opulent, comfortable card. I love that she's got her little bird on her finger. It's just beautiful. So here we have the 10 of Coins, which you know, I definitely can see that 10 of Coins energy coming through, but to me, it speaks more to ancestor energy, but that's just the way that I've taken to reading this particular card. It's a little bit of a variation from what we tend to see, but I think it's beautiful. Here we have our Page of Coins, and she's very cute with her little lemonade stand. I quite like her. The rest of the court card for the coins is not my favorite. A little bit of a disappointment to me. I mean, he's fine. He's just kind of lacks that depth, I think, that some of the other knights have. And here's our Queen of Coins, which actually I really don't. She's very opulent, I guess, but to me, it's a very materialistic card. And being that the Queen of Pentacles is kind of my card, and the card that I associate with most strongly, I see pentacles as being of the earth, and this to me just depicts greed and you know, materialism, and that's not really how I see the Queen of Coins. So this one's a bit of a disappointment, as is the King, because he again feels like a little bit of a miser feel to him, as in maybe, you know, he's hoarding all of his resources, all of his wealth and his opulence, and he's just keeping it all to himself because he looks like he's in an attic. Looks like he's hidden all of his treasures away in the attic. But again, this is just how I'm seeing the cards. So, you know, you might find something totally different in it, which is great and one of the wonders of tarot, right? So he's a nice King of Coins. I see, when I look at him, I see Eddie Izzard. So that's another one, like the whole Pauly Shore thing just kind of kills that one for me, but I can still work with it. So that is our suit of coins. Now that we've taken a look at the cards, let's take a quick peek at the guidebook. So it is just your typical little white book. It's stitch bound, which is kind of nice. So on the inside, we just have some basic information. We have a foreword, an introduction, a little section on what is tarot. We have a section for seekers and guides, a section about readings, interpretations, and here we have the major arcana begins here, and we just have a little bit about the majors, and then each major arcana has the title, a brief description, and a upright and a reversed keywords. And that is the layout for all of the majors. And then moving into the minors, which they call the lesser arcana, we have a brief blurb and then each about all of the suits. And here it talks about the numbers or pips. So this deck definitely takes some of the numerology into consideration, but it also does really, when you see the imagery, follow a Waite-Smith tradition in a lot of ways. So here we have, for every number, we have a brief description about the number, a single keyword for each of the cards within that number. I do have to say that I don't agree with most of the keywords, but that's just personal preference. And then we have a little bit of information a little bit more information about the numbers. It goes through all of the numbers to the 10, and then there is a section on the court cards, which again has a similar layout, a little bit of information about each court, and then a couple of keywords for each of the courts within the suits. Again, not sure how much I agree with what is written there, but, you know, to each their own. That is the beauty of tarot. So it's just a really simple little guidebook, nothing fancy, but, you know, it definitely works. I wish there was a little bit more in here about the artwork itself, because I think that would have been handy, being as detailed and as interesting as the artwork is. But I could also see, you know, letting people explore it from an intuitive standpoint. So now that we've taken a look at the guidebook, let's go ahead and give these cards a little shuffle. As you can see, it comes in a hard box. It is a glossy, and it's a perfectly lovely little box. Just your standard hard box. So the cardstock, I do want to mention real quick about the cardstock. It does have a linen finish, which sometimes catches the light quite poorly. I particularly don't like the linen texture on this deck because the artwork is so detailed and the painting is so detailed, and the texture just kind of pulls away from the detail. In my personal opinion, and in the light that I'm often using to do readings, it's very difficult to determine details if the light catches it wrong. I get that it makes it look more like a playing card, or makes it also look a little bit more like canvas, but I would have just preferred a nice plain matte cardstock on these cards. That is my only real complaint about this deck in terms of the cardstock. The titles are fine at the bottom. They're nice and small, but sometimes the gradient mixed with the font choice itself is a little difficult to read. I do really like that on the majors, the numbers are up in the corner and they are very unobtrusive, which is really nice. I really don't mind the borders for the most part on this deck. We do have color-coded borders, so all the majors are in black. All of the wands are in this kind of dark burgundy brownish color. The cups are in a very dark, I think it's supposed to be a navy blue. It looks black in a lot of different light. And then the swords are gray, which I quite like. And then the coins are this kind of tan color. So it is lovely to have the different colors on the borders. It looks nice in a spread, but when you compare that with the aces, like borderless would have just been phenomenal. So that is my only real tiff about the cardstock. The backs are beautiful. I quite like them. As far as the shuffling goes, I actually quite enjoy how this deck shuffles. It is a little bit slippery. So sometimes those cards get away from you, but it does shuffle and bridge beautifully. I know some people have mentioned there being a strong chemical smell on this deck when you open it. I did not experience that with mine. I chatted with Renee about it because she was there when I unboxed it, or we really unboxed it together. And neither one of us noticed a chemical smell on my deck, so I guess that maybe that just wasn't the case for mine, or perhaps it had just set long enough. So let's pull a couple cards just so we can take a look at how these look together on the table. So you can see here they do make for a beautiful layout. We've got this lovely Six of Cups here with that, you know, kind of nostalgia childhood. We have the Knight of Cups and our Thiefy Seven of Swords. So it is a quite beautiful deck. I really have, we kind of got off this deck and I got off to a little bit of a rocky start, but we're kind of slowly finding our way. There are a few cards in this deck that, which I pointed out in the walkthrough, that do give me pause, but maybe those are just some things that I need to work on. So I am looking forward to working with this deck more. So thank you for joining me for this walk through the Slow Tarot. I hope you enjoyed this stroll through the cards and will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.